Alors, est-ce qu'on est prêt? Oui? We're ready? Everyone's ready? All right. Donc, tout d'abord, j'aimerais souligner que nous sommes en territoire Anishinaabe non cédé. So, I'd like to remind that we're on Anishinaabe non-ceded territory. Je vous remercie là, pour votre présence à cette importante conférence de presse. Thank you for your presence at this important press conference. Je salue la présence de chefs. So we have Anishinaabe chiefs with us today. Henry Rogers, Chief of Lone Point First Nation. Lucien Wababa-Nonik, chef du Conseil de la Nation Anishinaabe de Lac-Simon. Dylan White Duck, Chief of Kitigan-Zibi Anishinaabeg. We have also Régis Pinachoué, chef du Conseil des Anishinaabe de Kitisekik. Alors, pour cette conférence de presse qui est tenue à l'invitation du Bloc québécois, donc je tiens à remercier le Bloc québécois. Mon nom est Éric Cardinal, je vais être le maître de cérémonie pour vous. Alors, nous allons d'abord entendre Sébastien Lemire, porte-parole des questions autochtones pour le Bloc québécois, suivi du chef Lance Haymond de Kebaowek First Nation. Then we'll have Miss Elizabeth May, leader of the Green Party. And we will also hear from Hendrickson, spokesperson of three groups, concerned citizens of Renfrew County and area, Ralliement contre la pollution radioactive, and the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility. Par la suite, il y aura une période de questions. Nous prendrons également une photo officielle à la fin avec les chefs et le représentant. Et I also inform you that we have a rally starting at 1 o'clock in front of the Parliament from many different Indigenous, non-Indigenous citizens and groups that are here to ask the federal government to stop the nuclear waste project at Chalk River. Donc, sans plus tarder, je vais inviter Sébastien Lemire, donc porte-parole du Bloc québécois, à vous adresser la parole.
Merci, Miigwech, Eric. Kwe, merci tout le monde d'être présent aujourd'hui. Merci aux chefs autochtones. Merci à mes collègues. Je suis très fébrile d'être ici parce que c'est un enjeu de société dont on ne parle peut-être pas assez. Je suis ici, évidemment, en tant que porte-parole des relations avec les Autochtones, mais je suis aussi en tant que député d'Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Chalk River est situé juste au bord de la rivière des Outaouais, à la frontière sud de la région de l'Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Évidemment, dans le contexte, et je salue le leadership et le courage de la nation de Kebaowek. Les risques les plus importants s'il y avait une catastrophe qui est à prendre ne seraient peut-être pas nécessairement dans ma région parce que les eaux coulent vers le sud et c'est peut-être l'ensemble du Québec qui peut en être impacté ou 95 % de la population. Dans un ère de changement climatique et de déréglementation climatique où le risque zéro n'existe jamais, est-ce que comme société, on est prête à vivre avec les conséquences? Le site de Chalk River est un site dont on le sait historiquement, il y a plus de 50 ans, il y avait des productions nucléaires. Donc, il y a quand même un intérêt. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec les déchets nucléaires qui existent déjà? Je comprends que c'est une problématique qu'on doit répondre. Mais pourquoi cette problématique-là doit se faire en ayant un site qui ne répond pas aux besoins locaux, mais qui est beaucoup plus grand? Moi, j'ai peur que ma région devienne, et la frontière de ma région, la poubelle nucléaire du reste du Canada. Et ça, pour moi, c'est une préoccupation qui est majeure. Il n'est pas question qu'on prenne les risques pour l'ensemble des choix qui sont différents que ceux que le Québec a posés. Et conséquemment, je suis ici pour donner l'appui du Bloc québécois, qui est un appui historique. Et je veux saluer le travail notamment de ma collègue Monique Posé, qui depuis plusieurs années a écrit notamment des mémoires et a pris position sur cet enjeu-là. Le travail de mon collègue Mario Simard aussi sur cet enjeu-là et toute la mode, je vais le dire entre guillemets, des mini-centrales nucléaires qui est extrêmement préoccupante pour l'avenir énergétique. Donc, pour moi, ce qui est important aussi aujourd'hui, c'est de donner la parole aux chefs autochtones parce qu'à travers tout le processus dont on a présentement, bien, quand on parle de réconciliation, il y a pour moi des processus de dialogue qui ont été complètement bâclés dans toute l'approbation qui a été donnée par la Commission canadienne de la sûreté nucléaire. Et conséquemment, bien, aujourd'hui, bien, je suis aussi ici pour interpeller le ministre Wilkinson pour qu'il fasse une intervention politique pour mettre fin à ce projet-là définitivement. Merci. Miigwech.
Merci, M. Lemire. Maintenant, Chief Lance Haymond.
So, Kwe, hello, bonjour, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and fellow concerned citizens, I stand before you today as Chief of Kebaowek First Nation, joined by a powerful coalition that spans Indigenous chiefs, federal political parties, municipalities, environmental groups, and many concerned citizens. We are here today in the nation's capital at the sacred confluence of the Gatineau, Rideau, and Ottawa rivers to speak about a matter dear to all of our hearts, water and protecting our watershed. The Kitsizibi is the heart and the bloodline of the Algonquin Nation. Together, we raised our unified voice to address a matter of great importance, the urgent need to halt the construction of the near-surface disposal facility at Chalk River. Je me tiens devant vous aujourd'hui en tant que chef de la Première Nation de Kebaowek, à laquelle se joint une coalition composée des chefs autochtones, des partis politiques fédéraux, des municipalités, des groupes environnementaux et de nombreux citoyens concernés. Ensemble, nous élevons notre voix pour aborder une question de grande importance, le besoin d'urgence d'arrêter la construction d'une installation de gestion de déchets près de la surface at Chalk River. I extend my gratitude to my fellow chiefs who are standing with me today, members from our community who are outside in the process of getting together the rally, the Bloc Québécois, the Green Party, the Council of Canadians, the Municipality of Gatineau, the Sierra Club Canada Foundation, and the concerned citizens of Renfrew County and area, and countless others who have joined our movement against a project that poses both environmental and social threats. And more than 3,000 concerned citizens have voiced their opposition by signing a House of Commons petition to bring the ongoing project to a halt in the new year, underscoring the pressing need for an Artemis review as well. Last week, Kebaowek First Nation took a significant step by submitting a judicial review challenging the decision by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to authorize the NSDF, or the construction of the NSDF. La semaine dernière, la Nation Kebaowek a soumis une révision judiciaire contestant la décision de la Commission autoriser la construction de l'installation. Le CCSN a manqué à son obligation de consultation en émettre notre consentement libre, préalable et clair. We argue that the CNSC breached its duty to consult with Kebaowek by failing to secure our free, prior, and informed consent, and by consultations in a procedurally unfair manner. Our legal challenge, alongside the concerned citizens of Renfrew County and area and the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility, seeks justice and protection for our rights and for the environment. I have personally written letters to Minister Stephen Guilbeault urging the Canadian government to stop the NSDF project and specifically to suspend the issuance of a Section 73 species at risk permit that is required for the project. Unfortunately, as of now, we are still awaiting a response from the Minister. Maybe today we will get that answer we've been waiting for. The river holds immense cultural, spiritual, and historical importance for the Anishinaabe people, connecting since time immemorial various communities along its banks and serving as a source of sustenance and a site for gatherings and ceremony. The river passes through non-ceded ancestral lands on which our nation holds title and rights. These rights are protected under the Constitution and recognized by the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and Canada's responsibilities under the United Nations Declaration Act. Last week's decision by the Supreme Court in C-92 reminded everyone that First Nations have ancestral rights protected by the Constitution, including the inherent right to self-government. So it's as a chief of a government that I present myself here to ask the current federal government, nation to nation, to step in and stop the nonsense decision made by the CNSC, a decision that is not good for the environment, and most certainly impacts our Indigenous rights. Moreover, our deep concern lies in the inadequate considerations given by the CNSC to the impact on species at risk. Under Section 73 of the Species at Risk Act, a permit may be issued for activities impacting wildlife species listed as endangered, threatened, or special concerns. Our studies on bear populations emphasize the importance of the proposed NSDF site as a nursery for black bears, and yet the absence of comprehensive studies on the various species there raises alarming concerns. The potential impact on water quality in Lac La Perche, a vital drinking water source, and the cumulative impacts on species at risk, including lake sturgeon and hickory mussels, demand, thorough examination. Kebaowek First Nation urges the federal government to consider Canada's biodiversity targets and acknowledge the role of Indigenous and traditional knowledge in the conservation and management of decision-making. Our Indigenous ancestral knowledge, honed as stewards of the land and water since time immemorial, should not be dismissed. We call for the establishment of a fair and inclusive consultation process that respects our rights and ensures the well-being of the environment, our people, and future generations. The potential risk to water in Lac La Perche, a key drinking water source, demands the immediate attention from every Canadian citizen. Our shared responsibility to protect our natural resources, ensure a sustainable future, and uphold the principle of environmental justice extends beyond cultural and territorial boundaries. As we unite in opposition to the NSDF project, we stand united in safeguarding the well-being of our shared environment and the fundamental right of all Canadians to access clean and uncontaminated drinking water. In closing, we stand united, urging the federal government to heed our collective plea and immediately halt the NSDF, suspend the SARA permit, and engage in a genuine and respectful consultation with First Nations. En terminant, nous sommes unis, demandant au gouvernement fédéral de nous attendre de remettre fin aux des projets de EGDPS, mais aussi suspendre les permis en vertu de la LAP et engager des consultations respectueuses avec les Premières Nations. The time to act is now. For the sake of our environment, our communities, and the principles enshrined in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Miigwech, thank you.
Chief Haymond. Now I invite Elizabeth Meek, leader of the Green Party.
Merci, Miigwech. C'est un grand honneur d'être ici aujourd'hui sur le terrain des peuples autochtones. We're here on the lands of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. To them we say Miigwech every single day. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes ensemble et en solidarité, unifiés, comme Chef Haymond a déjà, il vient de dire. Thank you, Chief Haymond, for your leadership. Thank you to the Kebaowek First Nation and others who have brought before the court a judicial challenge to the decision of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to rubber stamp, yet again, a request to put nuclear waste too close to a river, and against this express wishes and clear statement of principle from the Algonquin peoples on whose lands this near-surface nuclear waste will be placed. Let's just be very clear. Nous avons comme un Parlement fait une décision en faveur de le droit des peuples autochtones sur la Déclaration des Nations Unies. Et un des principes fondamentaux, c'est pour le consentement des peuples autochtones. As Chief Haymond just said, the clear language of UNDRIP, which was accepted and approved as law in this country, is free, prior, and informed consent of First Nations and Indigenous peoples before things are done in and on their territory. And now we have the approval of a near surface, they call it, a mound of nuclear waste of 80 years of experimental nuclear debris, 1.1 kilometre from the Ottawa River? In whose interest do you suppose the Government of Canada ignores UNDRIP over the desires of the Algonquin peoples? Far too often, the name of the corporate entity behind nuclear so-called renaissance in this country, behind such things as putting nuclear waste on Indigenous lands. The name is not well known to us. It's Atkins Realis. It's SNC-Lavalin. They own Chalk River. They are Canada Nuclear Laboratories. They are the powerful corporate lobbying interest behind ignoring UNDRIP. So I'm proud to stand here on behalf of the Green Party of Canada. C'est un grand honneur d'être ici avec les chefs autochtones et mes amis et collègues. Un grand merci à Bloc Québécois pour cette conférence de presse. Et nous sommes ensemble contre ce projet nucléaire. We stand together and support the Algonquin peoples, the Kebaowek First Nation, and all the chiefs who are here today. It's an enormous honor. Miigwech.
Thank you, Ms. May. Now I invite Ole Hendrickson, spokesperson of different environmental groups. Mr. Hendrickson.
Quay, bonjour, good day. My name is Ole Hendrickson. I'm here today representing three groups: concerned citizens of Renfrew County and area, Ralliement contre la pollution radioactive, and the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility. We have initiated a federal court challenge of the decision to license the NSDF. And our lawyer, Nicholas Pope, is here today, and he can help me answer questions. NSDF is the wrong technology in the wrong place. An above-ground mound, 1 kilometer from the Ottawa River, the Kitchissippi, waste exposed to extreme weather, such as high winds and heavy rains for a 50-year operating period. NSDF would release pollutants into the Ottawa River during and after operation, according to the proponents' own studies. This makes it an issue for millions of people, Canadians, along the Ottawa and St. Lawrence rivers who depend on them for their drinking water. What a legacy for our children. And what a terrible precedent for future radioactive waste facilities. Last October, Minister Jonathan Wilkinson endorsed a nuclear industry, a NWMO recommendation to create multiple NSDFs across Canada. Nuclear industry veterans are blowing the whistle about this project. One, who worked at Chalk River before Canadian Nuclear Laboratories was privatized by the Harper government, is quoted in yesterday's National Observer that the mishmash of unsegregated, unmarked, uncharacterized waste is unsuitable for the NSDF. Few Canadians realize that Chalk River opened in 1944 to produce plutonium for U.S. nuclear weapons. The waste has long-lived radionuclides that must be kept out of the biosphere for millennia. Canadian taxpayers would fund the NSDF. The Government of Canada owns the waste. It must take responsibility and not leave matters in the hands of profit-seeking private sector corporations. It must consult First Nations. It must abide by international safety standards. The Assembly of First Nations and more than 140 municipalities have passed resolutions against the NSDF. Many groups beside our three are opposed: Sierra Club Canada, the Canadian Environmental Law Association, chapters of the Council of Canadians, Ottawa Riverkeeper. We are very grateful to our Algonquin allies for their strong stand against the NSDF. We are grateful to the Bloc Québécois, who have been paying close attention to this issue since 2017. And we are also grateful to Elizabeth May for her leadership. We want the Government of Canada to come out of hiding, to respect Indigenous rights, and take appropriate action for the benefit of all Canadians and future generations. Miigwech, merci, thank you.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, on va passer à la période de questions. We'll take a few questions, and we also have a press release. If you need a copy, we have copies here, but it was also sent by email. Donc, questions?
Si je comprends bien, vous
Pour
demandez...
le chef Haymond?
Pardon?
Pour qui?
Pour Audrey Neveu, Radio-Canada. Honnêtement, c'est ouvert à tous, la question, autant les chefs autochtones que les partis. Si je comprends bien, vous demandez au gouvernement de faire indirectement ce que vous ne pouvez pas faire, c'est-à-dire de suspendre les permis restants en attendant la décision de votre recours judiciaire. If I understand correctly, right now, pending the resolution of your legal challenge, you're asking the federal government to suspend the remaining permits that would allow this project to go forward. Is that right?
That's correct. So, although the project was approved on January the 9th, to be able to, CNL to be able to advance also requires a permit from the Minister of the Environment under Section 73, which is a permit that would allow the destruction of habitat that is required for species at risk. So yes, we are asking the Minister to not issue that permit until such time as our judicial review has processed through the courts and a decision has been rendered.
And what about the fact that the Commission cannot study alternatives to the project? Because from what I understand, you would be okay with the project, but somewhere else. So what about pushing forward that idea?
Again, that really speaks to the lack of consultation and the fact that most decision had been already made by the time Kebaowek and the other Algonquin communities had been brought into the process. And we should have been brought in from the beginning when it was still a thought and the discussions around site location was being held. That did not occur. One site was chosen and they ran with it. Thus, we find ourselves in this situation. So.
Et le Parti vert, vous, est-ce que vous seriez d'accord avec la possibilité que la Commission ait désormais les pouvoirs d'étudier des alternatives aux projets qui lui sont proposés?
Oui, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec le chef Haymond et les positions des Algonquins parce que c'est clair que c'est leur terrain, leurs droits sont ignorés par le gouvernement fédéral, comme chef Haymond a dit, et aussi par la Commission sur la sécurité nucléaire. So we have a situation again where the words are really clear. Say them again: free, prior, and informed consent. The word prior is very important here because, as you've heard, the Indigenous peoples of the area were not consulted about the location of the site. There may be, your question is a good one, there might be another location. Personally, I completely agree with the point that old Hendrickson just made, that this technology, if you can call it a technology, of near-surface disposal in a mound of a variety of high-level nuclear waste created since the beginning of when Chalk River started to create plutonium. We don't have a good identification of exactly what's there. The idea that it's open to the biosphere in a near-surface facility is rather shocking. And even the environmental impact assessment conducted that was submitted to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission and cited in the court challenge makes it clear that there are risks to adjacent communities to the safety and security of the Ottawa River. But again, this is primarily, and why I stand here today as leader of the Green Party and so outraged, is that we keep coming up against examples of where the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is celebrated by Liberals until it gets in the way of a decision they've already made. That's the case with the Trans Mountain Pipeline. That's the case here. We really need to take a stand here. I was talking to Elder Claudette Commanda about this not long ago. Actually, we spoke about it at Ed Broadbent's funeral, saying, when is free, prior, informed consent actually free and prior consent? When do we take a stand? When do we draw a line? And this is an area where, again, the Green Party understands clearly that the primary jurisdiction and sovereignty here is that of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe First Nations. So my views on it are quite secondary.
permettre à la Commission de sûreté nucléaire d'étudier des alternatives aux projets qui lui sont proposés?
Il y a une réflexion à faire là-dessus, mais l'enjeu majeur, c'est la consultation qui ne se fait pas. On a eu la même problématique quand c'était le temps de déclassifier des types de déchets nucléaires, de réduire l'intensité de types de déchets nucléaires. Et une des préoccupations sur lesquelles le gouvernement devra se prononcer, c'est que dans sa stratégie énergétique, les petits réacteurs modulaires occupent une place importante. Donc, ça va créer des déchets. Et je pense qu'il y aurait d'autres choses à faire avant de se plier vers le nucléaire. Et je vous rappellerai simplement que initialement, c'était une demande du secteur gazier pétrolier qui voulait réduire l'utilisation de gaz dans leurs procédés et qui voulait utiliser des petits réacteurs nucléaires pour y arriver. Donc, je ne pense pas que c'est une stratégie gagnante si on veut prendre le tournant des énergies propres.
Pouvez-vous décrire les discussions que vous avez et la relation que vous avez avec M. Wilkinson sur ce dossier-là en particulier? Est-ce qu'il a une oreille? Est-ce qu'il tend l'oreille dans ce dossier-là, à votre avis?
Dans ce dossier-là, comme dans d'autres dossiers sur la question énergétique, le Canada est prisonnier du carcan pétrolier. Notre stratégie en matière de réduction des émissions suppose d'investir des masses d'argent dans des technologies qu'on ne sait pas s'ils vont être pérennes, et c'est symptomatique de ça. Moi, initialement, quand j'ai entendu parler de la mise de l'avant des petits réacteurs nucléaires, c'est parce que le secteur gazier pétrolier en avait fait la demande sur certaines recherches qui devaient être faites pour mettre à niveau les petits réacteurs nucléaires. Et leur objectif, avoué, c'était de réduire l'utilisation de gaz dans leurs procédés pour réduire leur empreinte carbone. Donc, est-ce que maintenant, il y aura des petits réacteurs nucléaires partout au Canada? Moi, j'en doute fortement. Les coûts sont quand même assez élevés. Ça fait partie de l'ensemble du bouquet de la stratégie énergétique du gouvernement, mais il y a place à plus de consultations, assurément.
Comment réagissez-vous à la motion du Parti québécois à l'Assemblée nationale qui a été battue hier, notamment par le député d'Ottawa, au sujet de Chalk River, que finalement, vous venez parler ici aujourd'hui, mais l'Assemblée nationale n'est pas alignée avec vous là aujourd'hui?
Mais ils feront leur débat du côté de l'Assemblée nationale. Ce que je sais, c'était la même chose sur l'hydrogène, c'est que le gouvernement fédéral met beaucoup d'argent public sur des stratégies. Au Québec, on en paie des impôts, donc c'est normal qu'on essaie de s'inscrire dans les stratégies que le gouvernement fédéral propose sur l'énergie. L'énergie, c'est le nerf de la guerre dans tous les secteurs d'activité économique. On est chanceux au Québec avec l'hydroélectricité, mais je sais que le gouvernement du Québec regarde aussi cette stratégie sur les petits réacteurs nucléaires. Personnellement, je pense que ce n'est pas la meilleure solution, mais ils auront à faire leur débat à Québec. Mais le gouvernement fédéral nous met quand même devant ce fait accompli où il redirige beaucoup d'argent dans l'utilisation de ces petits réacteurs nucléaires.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you want to halt to this particular project and for Stephen Guilbeault not to issue the licenses, but you also say that there's nuclear waste dating back to 1944 sitting around. I mean, where do you think they should put it? Is there a site that would be acceptable away from the Ottawa River and in a non-forested area?
The International Atomic Energy Agency says the first basic step in choosing a disposal facility is to look at the types of waste that need to be disposed of and appropriate sites. So a regional site investigation is needed. And you can't just pick a place that's very convenient and close where the waste is. In the Ottawa Valley, the Ottawa River is a fault line. It's an old earthquake-prone fault. As you move away from the river, particularly to the south in Ontario, the degree of faulting and fracturing, the solidity of the rocks increases. So a regional investigation would be required to find an appropriate site. And for the types of waste at Chalk River, the international safety standards recommend in-ground disposal tens to hundreds of meters below the surface.
And just as a follow-up, I mean, clearly for Indigenous communities, this is a huge issue. I mean, you want Stephen Guilbeault to intervene, but have you also approached, ministers responsible for Indigenous affairs to intervene as well? If one of the chiefs could maybe, I don't know.
Sur cet enjeu-là, le comité des affaires autochtones et du Nord, puis là-dessus, je salue le leadership et l'initiative de ma collègue Marilyn Gill, qui avait le dossier précédemment, a été entendu à la commission. Donc, il y a d'autres travaux qui devront se faire incessamment. Il y a des projets de loi actuellement sur la qualité de l'eau. C'est des éléments dont on pourra parler. J'ai eu la chance de répondre à une des questions, justement, de ma collègue Elisabeth May sur l'enjeu de Chalk River par rapport à ça. Je pense que c'est un enjeu dont on a à prendre collectivement toute la portée politique et la portée de société de l'enjeu. Puis je pense que c'est notre travail en tant que parlementaire de s'assurer que ça puisse se faire. Puis merci aux médias qui sont présents pour pouvoir aussi toucher cet enjeu.
My question's for the First Nations leaders. The Resources Minister, Jonathan Wilkinson, hasn't even taken a position on this project publicly yet. He hasn't endorsed it and he hasn't opposed it. So what would you like to see the Resources Minister do, and how satisfied are you with his handling of this file so far?
Well, I don't think we're satisfied with the handling of this file by any department of this federal government, not only Minister of the Environment. Again, there are other ministers that we've reached out to, including the Prime Minister. And again, very disappointed in the fact that there has been no response. And hearing that the Government of Canada hasn't taken a position, but indirectly they have, because they delegated their responsibilities and authority to the CNSC, who in our opinion have muffed up the decision, and that's why we're asking the federal government through the ministers to intervene. Because again, you know, when you delegate responsibility and it doesn't, or you know, they flub the process, they need to step in, recognize that there were errors, and make the adjustments and corrections. And that's what we're asking this federal government to do.
And my follow-up is about the drinking water issue. It's open to the floor for whoever wants to answer it. I understand a big concern is CNL's plan to discharge treated effluent, which is contaminated with tritium, into Perch Lake, which runs into Perch Creek. The Safety Commission found this plan will have negligible impact on tritium concentrations in the Ottawa River, so they're okay with it. What do you make of the Commission's decision on that?
Well, again, I think, you know, it's a terrible decision. From what we understand, that, you know, this contamination cannot be treated, and even if they build the facility, they're going to continue to pollute the Ottawa River, because Ontario allows a certain limit of tritium to enter into the waterway. And so they believe that through the building of a treatment plant and natural filtration, that by the time it hits the Ottawa River, that it'll meet provincial norms. But clearly the provincial norms are too high, and that there no amount of any way should be acceptable in when we know that it's going to reach the Ottawa River.
Juste une dernière for the Chief Wydock or Haymond. Ma question, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire, qu'est-ce que vous pouvez faire au cas où la contestation judiciaire ne fonctionne pas? So what will you do, what can you do in case, worst case scenario, the challenge, judicial challenge won't work?
Well, for Kitigan-Zibi's part, we're going to actually take a step back and follow the leadership of Kebaowek First Nation. We were part of the whole process in the hearing, and we feel it's necessary at this time to let one community designate themselves to take action against this. The less, the better, we feel. We will support them. I have fellow chiefs here that are in supportive of this as well from the Algonquin Nation. We will support Kebaowek First Nation and what decision whatever outcome happens at this time. Personally, myself, I'm really ashamed of this and this project, and I'm ashamed to be a Canadian of this project happening. Grew up watching The Simpsons, and we're going to have a situation potentially of three-eyed fish, you know, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's the kind of scenario that might occur in the future, you know. So for me, it's mind-boggling that this whole process and the fact that Canadians are just allowing this to happen, and accountability has to be on this government, and we want to thank all the supporters and allies supporting us in this cause. Miigwech.
So, just in closing, so right now we're resting, our hopes on the judicial review process. It was our only option in terms of the decision rendered by on January the 9th. In the end, if the commission, does not waver in its, or there's not a positive decision, again, we'll take a step back and look at what our options are in terms of moving forward and challenging this. Potentially, again, we're asking for an Artemis review, which is the international body, to come in and make an evaluation of the project. So again, I don't know exactly what our options would be, but we would most certainly look at other legal options. And finally, I think, we've mentioned many times, this is the unceded territory of the Algonquin people. And maybe it'll be a catalyst for us to push and support the work that was started by Kitigan-Zibi and addressing the issue of rights and title and whose territory does this belong to in the first place. So I'll leave it at that, because it's hard to anticipate what the future will look like when we haven't got a decision from the process of the judicial review.
Any message for the Prime Minister? You may not have seen him, but he slipped right by when you were delivering your speech.
Well, again, clearly, this government, in the international forum and even here in Canada, says a number of things. One, the Prime Minister will always stand up, and any member of government will recognize that this is the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So that's number one. Number two, he goes out, and this government goes out and promotes that they are champions of the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous People. So my message, quite simply, to the Prime Minister is actions speak louder than words. Reconciliation is a series of actions and not words. So if this government is serious about reconciliation with the Anishinaabe people, we've given him a golden opportunity and his government to stand up and show that UNDRIP is more than just a piece of paper sitting in this government, not wondering what to do with it. Implement it as it was intended, and follow through with the articles of UNDRIP that apply in this particular case. So, essentially.
Je vous remercie beaucoup. Thank you for attending this press conference. Il est toujours possible de faire des entrevues individuelles. If you wish to do individual interviews, that's possible to do. So merci beaucoup encore. Bonne fin de journée. Maintenant, prise de photo officielle avec tous les porte-paroles.